Hello again, everyone. First off, before we start, let me just apologise for the quality of this video. It's not using all my usual equipment. I'm just using the onboard webcam and microphone from my computer. It was a bit of a last-minute thought, actually. Last time I did a guitar teardown and rebuild, which was the Marlin Sidewinder. It was quite well received, and I planned on doing, or at least starting, something similar this evening. So I thought you might want to see it. I got an offer for an Epiphone Dot semi-hollow guitar, which is effectively a 335 with a centre block. It's at the cheaper end of the scale. I think you can get a Studio Dot, which is cheaper yet again, but that also in good condition is a guitar that's probably worth about £250 to £300. Now at this point, I didn't actually own a hollow body myself, so I was kind of tempted by this. But the chap who was selling it said that the guitar needed some TLC and it needed rewiring. I was just sort of tempted because I didn't have a hollow body. And truth be told, I think he probably got a better deal in terms of raw cash value. But I got a hard case with the Dot and everything like that. When I got it home, I found that, as he described, it didn't actually even make a sound. It did actually also have a few more dings on it than I expected. In fact, yeah, let me show you. Just turn the monitor on there so you can see what I can see what you can see. So, problem number one, it's got a bit of a scuff here. These are not the pickups it came with. The pickups it came with are the original Epiphone pickups, which are fine. Although the problem I had with these were they were extremely rusted and the screws in them were that far gone that I couldn't actually adjust the height on them or anything like that. And my personal preference is to either have a splittable humbucker or a P90 in the neck because I like that versatility in the neck. So given the state that the pickups were in, I have briefly trialled these Warman P90 pickups in, and I have to say, at least on the bridge, I'm very, very happy with them. But to go back to the rewiring of this guitar, when I actually pulled the original wiring out of it, I found a number of problems. I mean, the first one, I don't know if you can see here actually, have I fixed it or not? Yeah, I think I fixed it, but just to demonstrate anyway. Normally on a standard pickup, you will get at least two wires, sort of like the hot and the cold, if you like. In this case, the cold wire is actually the shielding, but you've still effectively got two wires running through the guitar. The chap who'd attempted to wire these pickups in had effectively entirely cut off the shielding, leaving only one wire, and connected that one wire where it would normally be connected and expected that to produce a sound. So he clearly had no knowledge of what he was doing. I mean, I don't profess to be the best electrician in the world, but I know that you need to have a complete circuit before current will flow. So just literally by actually connecting both wires of the pickups I put in, I managed to get a sound out of it. But there were further problems. The knobs that are in there, the pots that are in there are actually alpha pots, which is fine, assuming they're authentic, at least anyway. But they are linear pots. For anyone who doesn't know, what a pot effectively is a variable resistor. And depending at what resistance that pot is turned to, it will control things like volume or tone. The problem is that the way we hear things, the amount of power going through an audio circuit, or the amount of a current or a frequency, however you want to phrase it, going through an audio circuit is not linear. You need to effectively, I think, how does it go again? You need to double the power to get an extra 3 decibels of noticeable volume, which to a lot of people doesn't mean anything. But ultimately, the the actual meaning of that is if you have a linear pot in there which effectively steadily sweeps down the values of resistance from 0 to 500 or 0 to 250 as it normally be, what you'll actually find in terms of what you actually hear coming out of the speaker is that you'll kind of get nothing, 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 and then all the usable stuff that you can hear is in the last little bit of the pot. Because if you actually want to hear a steady volume increase as your ear hears it, you don't want a line ramping up. You don't want a linear line ramping up on a graph like that. What you actually want is sort of like a curve. So there's two kinds of pots you can get. There's linear pots and there's what can be called audio or audio taper pots. They're also called logarithmic pots. And that basically means the resistance is applied as you turn the knob in that curved shape. So in practical terms, what that actually means is the knobs on this, the tone pots in particular, effectively do nothing and nothing and nothing, and then you can kind of have them on or off at the end, which is no good to me, really. And in fact, I think there might be something wrong with the capacitor on one of the tone knobs because it just doesn't seem to work at all despite having rewired it. So we've got to address the electronics in it. I've got some audio taper pots to go in there. I've already actually, when I did the initial investigation with the pickups, added a new jack socket. The original switching and everything's still in there. The pickups themselves are great, but I don't know if you can see here, the Warman pickup itself of its own accord seems to have sunk inside the outer casing a little bit. It should be flush like this pickup here. See how it's flush against there? Whereas on this side it's kind of dipped inside. Now, I think I actually have clearance problems on that back pickup cavity. I don't think I can actually lower the pickup any lower than it currently is, and I think that's part of the problem. So I want to get those back out there and investigate them anyway. But before I can do... Oh, yes, and actually, as I mentioned, there is a bit of a scuff here on the paint. I don't know if you can see, but there is also some chipping going on around here to address. It's not the end of the world. I'm not actually someone who's actually bothered by dings on a guitar. I don't like relict guitars either, but when they're kind of road worn and just kind of have character, I'm okay with that. But that said, I think possibly with the addition of PRS guitars, I think hollow body guitars are the worst kind of guitars to have ding on. I don't think they really suit it, so I might try and address that paintwork as well. But before I can do any of that, I need to look at the neck. Now, there's nothing particularly wrong with the neck in terms of how it looks. All the frets are there, all this kind of thing. I've been playing this guitar for a number of weeks and it's absolutely fine. However, there are some niggles. It has a classic problem, which is common on these kind of guitars, where once you get below about the 12th or 13th fret, notes in this area are tending to mute out, and that is despite the guitar itself having a fairly high action. So the neck itself actually seems fairly straight to me. So I don't know what's causing that. I need to have a look at that further. It may be that the fret, I either need a truss rod adjustment or the frets themselves might need to be lowered slightly at this end or leveled. So that's everything on the to-do list. But only the other day, after having actually gigged this guitar a couple of times in its present condition, I noticed a new problem. And I might have to put the camera down here to show it. So I've just actually quickly grabbed my phone camera here because it's got a better camera on to be able to show you. I don't know if you can see there, the 13th fret, which is this one here, has raised ever so slightly at this end. I can actually get my fingernail under that fret and it's actually a little bit sharp here as well. I don't know if that was a recent occurrence or not, but I'd like to see it addressed. Now, one thing I need to check actually, One thing I do need to check is whether or not that fret is actually, as it currently stands, sticking up significantly above the other frets. So if I get a fret rocker and stick it over there, yeah, so in the center of the 13th fret, there's no rock. If anything, yeah, it might be a little bit high on the edge, but it's not too bad. But then as I get to the edge where it's sticking up there, you can see there's a definite rock. So that fret needs stuck down. Now, as it is, the fret does feel fairly firm in there. So I'm hoping actually all it needs is a little tap. So if you had all the budget in the world, probably the best thing to do would get any kind of fret press that can apply a good amount of pressure. So you get some more grip type ones from StewMac, or you can get little adapters to go on the end of a pillar drill, or you can just get little brass things you sit over there and then use a hammer on them. I don't have any of those, so I'm going to try varying degrees of subtlety in getting that fret to go in. In the first instance, what I'm actually going to use is just one of my small grip clamps. I'm going to put it on the fret with a bit of padding and actually just tighten the clamp really tight and see if that pressure alone will push the fret back in. So let's try that now. So I'm literally just going to put that clamp over the offending fret. Just give it that little bit of persuasion. Leave it a second and take it off again. Sure, people wouldn't recommend you do that, but I don't see the harm. And if I look, no, I think that has gone down a bit, but it's still not ideal. I think we're effectively looking at hammering. It's so close. It's really borderline as to whether I need to do anything more with that fret. I mean, you could get a guitar with that much of a gap and consider that normal. But I think in relation to the other frets that are there, it's still just not quite good enough. I think a little bit of persuasion with a hammer might be in order. So as I previously alluded to, the problem I'm going to have here is that normally when you're hammering frets in, you want to use something that has a radius that roughly matches the fret, because you don't want to kind of hammer it flat and misshape it, because, well, then you've got a damaged fret, and best case scenario, you need to do a fret job. Worst case scenario, you need to refret. I don't have anything like that. So what I'm actually going to do is take my hammer, take a relatively soft piece of scrap wood, place that over the fret, and give it a tap on the end. The logic there being that the wood itself will give way to the steel of the frets. Say the steel, it's probably a nickel alloy, these frets. But it just provides a little bit of give so that the fret is less likely to become misshapen, as opposed to just hitting it with the solid hammer itself. I do intend to actually do a fret job on this anyway, so I'm not bothered about a little bit of distortion. I just don't want a pancake. There you go. Don't be alarmed by all that dust. That is just off the wood. It's a bit of scrap wood that came from somewhere when I was plastering recently. Now, that feels a lot better. I think, yeah, From this side, from the bottom side, I can't see a gap at all. From the top side, I can maybe just about see the slightest hint gap. Might just give it a little bit more of a hammer there. Really hammer it home. Pardon the pun. We're looking at the 13th fret, which is this one here. You can see it's actually sitting probably lower than the 12th fret. So that's not bad at all. So I'm happy with that where it is. What I do want to do is just allow that time to rest and make sure that it's not going to sort of spring back out again overnight or anything like that. So what I will do, I will check the truss rod tension and make sure that the neck is level and flat, because we want it to be level and flat if we're going to do a fret job anyway. And I'll actually leave that overnight and just see if I see any signs of that fret popping back out. I mean, ideally, you never know. I could be a few months down the line, and if that is a problematic fret, it may well pop out again, in which case we might have to look at gluing it back down, but I'm prepared to take that risk for the time being. So yeah, let's check the truss rod relief. Normally, to check the neck relief, I would use a notched straight edge, something like this. In this instance, I can't actually get the straight edge flat on the fretboard without it fouling this pickup, which is sitting a little bit high. I'm going to be taking all of the electronics out anyway to redo those pots, so I might as well take the time to take all the electronics out now. Okay, so I want to see why these pickups are fouling. I think the best way to do that is to effectively lower them down to the lowest possible point that I would ever consider having them, and see if I can see if they're clipping on anymore. No, and they still fit fine. I can feel there's plenty of room to move them around. I think what's actually been happening has been purely to do with the actual construction of the pickup itself. Let me just try tightening them up again. Nope, I've got them higher than they'd ever need to go now, and it's still absolutely fine. I can only think, from having a little play around with it there, that I think something to do with the way the pickup's constructed and the movement of this spring as I tightened it, it might have been catching on the outer cover of the pickup, and that was just snagging slightly, but there's actually plenty of room there inside there for those pickups, so I'm going to be able to use them absolutely fine. which is a relief because I thought I might have to do some routing or something, but that's great. Let's get the other one out. Might just go phone cam there a second just to show you the amount of corrosion there is on some of the original hardware. Shows you how much of a hard life this guitar's really had. Might look into sourcing some new ones of those, although I'm not particularly, as I say, not that precious about things like that really. It's not the end of the world and barely noticeable when you've got the tailpiece on there anyway. Quick look in the pickup cavities if you'd like. All fairly neat. And all we've really got left on here is the grounding wire that goes to the bridge. All right then. So now that the electronics and the pickups and everything are out of the way, we need to go back to having a look at that neck. Before we go anywhere, I'm going to just remove the truss rod cover. And grab our notched straight edge. Once more, let's have a look. You'll note that the neck is supported slightly. Now, as it stands, I can see that the entire straight edge is rocking on a central point. So I can see it left and right. You probably won't be able to see that well on camera, but it is rocking on this axis like that. Now, that means at the moment the neck is backbowed slightly, somewhere in the middle. Now, that is actually pretty normal at this stage because there's no string tension on here. And when you add some strings in, that will actually pull the neck forward a little bit. But regardless of that, if I'm going to do a fret job, I need a flat surface to work with. And I don't really want to be flattening the frets in relation to a bent neck. So I want to do my absolute best to try and get this neck as straight as possible. So, truss rod adjustments in order. Oh, that feels like a good fit. That's a 5mm key, a metric 5mm key, which I think is about the same as 3/16 of an inch. Let's try the 3/16. Yeah, that actually feels a bit loose. And 7/32 doesn't seem to fit. So yeah, 5mm is the one. And if we've already got a back bow, that means the truss rod is overcompensating at the minute. So I just want to loosen it off ever so slightly. He says, turning it the wrong way. It's normal if you imagine, if you're sat at the headstock end of the guitar and you're looking down towards the body of the guitar, it's lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So if I want to take the tension off the truss rod, I turn the truss rod to the left. I can feel there, to be fair, there wasn't really much or any tension on there. That's probably part of the problem we've been experienced with the notes fretting out down at the bottom end of the fretboard. if that neck has had a slight backbow, that could have aggravated the problem. Although, to be fair, looking down the neck by eye, at least, it did seem fairly straight. All that said, straight away there, that's now no longer rocking. And I cannot see a gap underneath the straight edge. That's really, really good. That means with no tension on the truss rod, this neck is actually really straight, which is brilliant. What I now want to do is just actually have a little quick look at the frets themselves and see how high, how low they seem to be in relation to each other. For that, I need a fret rocker. And basically, you lie that across 3 frets in total. Give it a little rock, see if you can feel it rock. See if you can see any daylight. Now, I don't think I've ever had it on any kind of sub £800 guitar where even out of the factory, there has been no rock whatsoever and all of the frets have been perfectly level. But let's see, right there. So we have a bit of a high fret there on the 6th fret. Yeah, little bits. Yeah, that one's all right. That 12th fret is massively high. Sorry, not the 12th fret, the 13th fret, which is the one that we hammered in. So maybe that's still not quite sitting as low as one would hope. But that said, the 14th fret's even higher. Pretty much every other fret along there is high in relation to the last one. So the plan is definitely going to be to do a bit of a fret level job. Truth be told, I've not done this before. It's sort of the first time. One thing I'm actually going to do as well is take the nut off, which I have done before. Just going to pop that cardboard down like that. And there goes the nut flying somewhere across the room. It's a nicely carved level platform that goes in. I'm going to go pick that up in a second. But, so, it's getting late. I think this is probably going to turn into another 2-parter because I have waffled on a little bit and the wiring, autofocus. The wiring does take quite a long time on one of these, unfortunately. So there we go. That's the teardown pretty much complete. I'll have to go off and find that nut now that I've just knocked behind a pile of boxes. Brilliant. The plan is to just actually let the neck settle there. I might actually even take it off this cushion and just kind of stand it in its case and just let it rest. I want to see if those frets move overnight. They probably won't. The central heating's on at the moment. It will go off later on and it'll get pretty damn cold in here. So it'll at least have a chance to experience the changing temperatures and we'll just check that fret, as I say, doesn't immediately pop back out. Like I say, it may well be in the future that I need to do something more permanent with that, but it took so much effort to actually get that fret to go back in. I think it will stay at least for a while. And then tomorrow we'll crack on with the fret job.